make co-host here. I think he's already co-host. Opening chat. How is everyone doing today? How is everyone doing? Oh boy. Cool. We'll wait for a few more people to join, then we'll start. Sir, teach hacking. Sure. Setting up my AWS. Like hacking. It's very first principles. I mean, I don't know. There are courses and certifications in hacking, but that's not the path I took. So some of my seniors took them. Now they work as security engineers at Meta. Let me get one of them on a pod. I think you might learn a lot from it. Grudki has very good infosec culture. They've been winning CTFs left, right, and center since I was there. So happy to bring someone who can give you better thoughts on if you want to learn pure infosec. But other than that, आज तो हैकिंग का कुछ नहीं होगा ऑनेस्टली. टुडे इज़ वेरी हैंड्स ऑन. कैन यू स्टॉप द हैंड रेजेस प्लीज आर्यन? But yeah, let me get someone. Like CTFs were very common back in college. Unfortunately, I did not do too many. But right now, I met the current Seki of InfoSec Roorkee. He came to our office, so let me see if I can get him to at least list down the topics that you can go through or the certifications that you can do, and we can go from there. I think there are better people to teach InfoSec is what I mean. But I can take you through standard things that usual web vulnerabilities that you'll see if you're trying to build something. Cool. All right, we'll wait another minute, then we'll start. I have to call it a little early today. So let's try to get into it as soon as possible. Yesterday's class was a little heavy for a few people towards the end, when we discussed SSH keys and how can you use them to sign up and sign in. Sorry, not sign up and sign in, SSH into a machine. So we're sort of not doing a recap. I'll not take you through what VMs are again, but we'll pick a different cloud provider, specifically AWS, and try to go through how can you create a VM on AWS and also maybe deploy one Munstack application there. We'll understand. I mean, you can look at the slides. Let me post it in the chat. So try to go through the slides. And the big things you'll learn if you understood everything yesterday would be Nginx, if we certificate management, and process management. These might be the three things you'll learn today. Everything else we sort of covered yesterday, but on a different cloud provider, DigitalOcean. We'll cover the same on AWS. AWS some specific things, security groups if you've heard of them, SSH keys, how to create them in AWS. But other than that, it's very similar to how we've done it in DigitalOcean. Every cloud provider will have a different way to start compute, a different way to set up firewalls. So we'll understand what are firewalls and what is that challenging thing that might come in AWS where you might get stuck. But other than that, everything we did yesterday is close to what we'll do today. But today we'll try to actually deploy the application. Yesterday we did not deploy the application. Okay? So go through the slides skim through these topics. And let's start with the poll. How many of us already understand everything? That includes Nginx and maybe certificate management using something like certbot, nothing too fancy. Do you already understand the topics that are written on screen here? All right. So 25% already or 28% already do, 72% don't. So that's a quite decent mix, I think. That means we'll try to go slow-ish, but eventually increase the pace. Okay? Let's start. Let's not waste any more time. Today, as I said, we have to go a little fast because I have to call it a little early. Okay? So welcome to the second Devops class. Today we are diving into AWS. AWS has its own ecosystem. It is very, very big. In fact, there are certifications to understand AWS kitna bada. You might have heard of Azure certification, AWS certification. A lot of consults like TCS, when their people are sitting on bench, they make them go through these certifications. So जो AWS certification कर लेता है, then they are put on AWS projects. जो Azure certification कर लेता है, then they are put on Azure projects. So everyone is providing the same things. The names are different, and how to create them is a little different. So that's what we'll understand for AWS today. Specifically, we'll just understand compute, but AWS has 1,000 things. There's a very nice video in cohort 2 around object stores and CDNs that I'll probably post. That will teach you another thing on AWS, but AWS is a full ecosystem of 1,000 things that you can do. Let's kick things off. Let's start with what is AWS, Amazon Web Services. Back in the day, I think around 2008, Amazon realized that they have a lot of machines all around the world that they were using to run Amazon.com. And they realized they can rent out some of these machines. That was the birth of Amazon Web Services, and then eventually Google got into the same market, Microsoft got into the same market. It's a very big market now of what are called cloud providers. AWS is a decent chunk of profitable revenue for Amazon right now. In fact, last I heard, Amazon.com e-commerce website wasn't profitable, but AWS was. Might have changed recently. So we'll understand what is this thing and how do you use AWS. Thoda I'm hoping you've heard of it as a buzzword in the past. AWS is Amazon's cloud service. Now cloud is a very weird term. Go through a bunch of memes. Some politician in India said cloud se to rain ho jayegi, something like that. So cloud is just a vague term. Okay, how cloud does not mean cloud for complete beginners. It is nothing related to rain or the weather. It's just called cloud because you don't own the machine, someone else does. तो ऐसा लगता है कि cloud पे पड़ी है. It is present somewhere else. That is the initiation of the name. Has nothing to do with the real cloud. What does AWS let you do? It lets you rent servers, or more technically virtual machines, and 1,000 other things. It lets you manage domain names. It lets you upload objects. It lets you start databases also. It lets you auto scale servers. Auto scale servers, Harkirat? If your number of visitors go up, it increases the number of virtual machines that you have. If the number of visitors go down, it decreases the number of virtual machines that you have. It lets you create Kubernetes clusters. It has its own object store that you can use. Container registry that you can use to deploy Docker containers. Don't worry about what that is. It has this concept of VPNs, VPSs, so on and so forth. Full ecosystem of anything you might need as a very big enterprise company to run. In fact, back in the day, Goldman had its own cloud when I was at Goldman, but now they've moved to AWS as well. So they provide managed services as well. Okay, they'll provide you can run AWS dashboard on your own data center for big companies. OpenAI does the same, so on and so forth. So very big enterprises also use them, small startups also use them. We'll understand today how to rent servers in AWS. It lets you do 1,000 other things. This is what we'll focus on today. The offering we will be focusing on today is renting servers on AWS. Slides are over here. Let me paste them one more time in chat and then we'll proceed. So AWS, if you have ever logged into AWS, you can see a bunch of services over here: databases, customer enablement, containers, compute, blockchain, application integration, so on and so forth. The one that we are interested in is called EC2. So you can search for EC2 over here and reach the EC2 dashboard. What does EC2 stand for? It stands for Elastic Compute version number 2. What is Elastic Compute? Go to yesterday's class. क्या पढ़ा था हमने in yesterday's class? कि there is this concept of a very big company like AWS buying or renting a data center. So they have a lot of hardware, and on top of the hardware, they have something called as a hypervisor, which lets them provision virtual machines. Why is it called a virtual machine? Because it isn't a small machine that is over there. It is just a virtual machine which can use some parts of this hardware. It cannot use the complete hardware. It can use some limited part of the hardware, 2 CPUs, 4 GB RAM, 500 GB SSD, so on and so forth. So this is what a virtual machine stands for. Elastic का मतलब क्या है? You can increase and decrease its size. Compute का मतलब क्या है? Compute means some part of this hardware, and 2 means the second version. So EC2 means Elastic Compute 2, which means lets you create a bunch of virtual machines. If you look at my EC2 dashboard right now, I have one instance running. This is not mine, by the way. This is Sargam's AWS. So shout out to Sargam to let us use this today. And you can get like free credits if you have a small mini startup, or even a Twitter page that says it's a startup. Apply for the founder grant and they'll give you $5,000 of free credits to play with AWS. I think Sargam has the same. He already has something running over here. As you can see, it says Webcraft, which is a side project he's working on. And this is the ID of his instance, a random ID. He already has one virtual machine in the Mumbai region that he's running. This is the type of the instance. There are names of various types of machines you can start. T2 small means, let's say 2 CPUs, 4 GB RAM. T2 medium might mean 4 CPUs, 8 GB RAM. T2 large might mean more, so on and so forth. When we create one, we'll see this as well. alarm status, whether or not there is an alarm, if the machine is running on an running out of space or running out of compute, it is not responding. Availability zone. So Mumbai region mein, yeah, this is Mumbai region, right? In Mumbai region, AWS or multiple cloud providers have this concept of availability zones. AP South 1A, AP South 1B, AP South 1C. That means Mumbai may they have multiple isolated data centers. Which one of those isolated data center he has it on? That's the availability zone. A publicly available domain name for his machine as well. One good thing that AWS provides you, it gives you a domain name. Now it's not a very good domain name. It's not 100xdevs.com. It is not harkirat.com, but it is something that you can use to access this machine. This domain name then points to this specific public IP. Matlab, this is the public IP of the machine. This is a domain name that they have created that points to this IP. I can create my own 100xdevs.com and point it to this IP. If I don't have a domain right now, if I don't have the power to buy one or the money to buy one, I can also use this domain and send it to my friends and let them access my machine. Sending someone this is slightly better than sending someone this for your web application. ये तो बहुत ugly हो जाएगा. People wouldn't understand what is he sending me. He's trying to hack me. But this is a proper domain name, better domain name that you can look at. Elastic IPs. Whenever you stop this machine and restart this machine and stop this machine and restart this machine, this IP keeps on changing. So elastic IPs is a constant IP that you can get. Every AWS account I think can get 5, and if you have some specific use case you can ask them. One of my friend has 100, but by default you only have 5 elastic IPs that you can create. Elastic IP means a constant IP. If you attach an elastic IP over here, then even if this machine stops and you restart this machine, the IP of the machine will remain the same. Monitoring disabled, security group name, we'll come to what security groups are, when was it launched, key name, we'll come to this as well, the platform that he has started, so on and so forth. ठीक है, managed matlab, if you know what managed services are, okay, you can't turn them up or down, or AWS is managing them for you. Operator, I don't know what that is. These are the properties of the one machine that Sargam has. The name that Sargam gave, if I want, I can change it. The ID of the instance, it is currently running, so the state is running. If I select instance state and click on stop instance, then this instance state will become stopped. If I start it again, it will become running. The type of the instance, does he have a big machine or a small machine? Right now he has a small machine. Status checks, these go up as you start the machine. First you get 1 by 2, then 2 by 2. It means everything is working right now. If you have alarms, you can set alarms on CPU, RAM usage, so on and so forth. That also you can, if they're above a certain threshold, the alarm will throw over here. Availability zone, us specific data center mein, which availability zone is this server on? Is it 1A, is it 1B, is it 1C? If you have multiple servers in AWS Mumbai, it's a good idea for you to balance them, one in 1A, one in 1B, one in 1C, so that if the 1A data center goes down, you still have a backup of 1B. In fact, in the future, when we create an auto scaling group and we start 100 machines, you will see they get balanced. 33 machines will be in 1A, 33 machines will be in 1B, 34 machines will be in 1C. A domain name, an IP, and that's pretty much all we need today. This is the machine he already has. We are going to start our own machine. So let's understand what are the steps to create our own virtual machine. If you don't have access to AWS today, it is fine. You can get one tomorrow and try it. I would urge you to get a GCP and an AWS and an Azure account. These are the popular ones. In fact, abhi jo ek job opportunity आई है, their requirements were AWS and Python. AWS was optional, but most companies you will find in this stack. Rarely will someone say DigitalOcean specialist I want. AWS, Azure, GCP. Why? Harkirat cloud hai, ye to why do they want AWS specialization? Because the way to start services here is different from how do you start it in GCP. So someone who has started these already is more comfortable with these. They would want to hire them if their existing stack is in AWS. Most companies use AWS only, but it depends. Most companies that I have worked on use AWS. Does not mean that this is the popular one, but these three में से कोई होगा. So please create accounts on all three of these. They all give you free credits to try things out, and hence as long as you have a credit card, you're good to go. ठीक है? Can you guess how can I start a new machine over here? There is a launch instances button. So most probably it is that. If I click on launch instances, it takes me to this dashboard. I can give a name to this specific machine. Let me call it class 2 and chat app. Let's say we will deploy our chat application here. I don't know what project we'll deploy, but assume for now chat app हम deploy कर रहे हैं, ठीक है? The name of this specific instance, take a second to do it, no pressure. Let me show one more time. Go to the AWS dashboard, write EC2 over here, open the EC2 dashboard, click on instances or directly click on launch instance over here. Give it a name. I'm giving it class Devops to chat app. Give it whatever name you want. Select an operating system. Amazon has its own OS as well if you want. It's called Amazon Linux. It's built on top of Linux, but they've done some things on top. So you can select this, or you can select Ubuntu, Windows, whatever you want. Let's say I'm going with Ubuntu for now. So it also lets me select what version of Ubuntu I want to start, and this is the latest one, 24.04. So I'm going to start this one. If you have a specific use case in which you have to go back and you need an older version of Ubuntu, you can do that as well. Does anyone know in what case I might want to start Ubuntu version 20? 20 तो मुझे दिख भी नहीं रहा. I don't see 20 here. Where did we start? I think we started in Civo then. But there are some very specific nuanced use cases where you have to go back to Ubuntu 20. Does anyone know one use case? किसी को पता है ये क्या था? Because I recently saw this and a few people were involved जिन्होंने भी ये चीज़ देखी थी कि क्या वो use case है. It's very close to you guys. Like I mean, especially DSA folks. Old projects, not really. Low specifications, long-term supported. Do you know what C groups are? Oracle free VMs. Yeah, that might also be the case. Okay, cool. So there is this very popular app called Judge Zero, if you might have heard of it. And if you, this is used by platforms like LeetCode basically, or if you've used TOF by Striver, or we were trying to build similar one, all of them use this. And all of us do not use Ubuntu version 24. We use Ubuntu version 20. In fact, I had a tweet where I said $200 bounty if someone can deploy Judge Zero using Helm charts in a Kubernetes cluster. So long story short, if you want to deploy Judge Zero, you can't on Ubuntu 24. Why? There are four, Ubuntu 20 used a different version of C groups. Ubuntu 24 uses a different version of C groups. Forget what C groups are for now. It's a way to limit resources in a process. And जब आप LeetCode जैसा कुछ बनाते हो, you need to limit resources. If Harkirat clicks on submit on your application on LeetCode, you have to give him only 2 CPUs, not the whole machine, right? So C groups let you do that. And Judge Zero ka open source version only works in an old one. They have a closed source version that they try to push, which is why they haven't open sourced that part. And that is why it's a little difficult to deploy Judge Zero. You can use their managed service, which is what they want you to do, and then you have to pay them. But that's where you might want to fall back. That's one of many use cases where you might have to fall back to an older version. Architecture, you might have heard of 34-bit, AMI, x86, default is fine. Instance type, here comes कि आपको कैसी machine चाहिए, which would depend on you. If you have a lot of, if you are expecting a lot of users, you might need a very big machine. T2.x large, T2.2x large, इसमें क्या है 8 vCPUs, इसमें क्या है 4 vCPUs, इसमें क्या है 2 vCPUs. So depends. Your to-do application doesn't matter. Even small, even micro is fine. Micro is also free. If you look at it, it says free tier eligible. So if you sign up on AWS and start a micro machine, you get some 720 hours of micro access for free. So you can start your machine for a few days every month. So if you are a complete whatever free person, don't want to spend a penny, then select micro. I'm going with small, doesn't matter either way. Our application will work on both of them. There's a very small nuance here. Okay, if you have a Next.js application or a React application, then avoid using micro, because if you build your application right, if you run npm run build on a Next.js application or a React application over here, it will run out of memory. You can serve a React application, you can't build a React application on a micro machine. As soon as you run npm run build, you'll see your machine is running out of memory, you'll have to restart it. So that is the only case where you might want to use, not want to use micro, or build it separately and then अपने machine पे push करो उसे. Don't build it on the machine. The machine isn't powerful enough to build a React project. Convert the TSX file, JSX file into HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I'm going to go with small. Key pair name. Here comes a very interesting thing that we discussed yesterday, and a few of you understood, few of you did not understand. You can use a key pair. Do we remember this from yesterday? Public key cryptography, public key and private key. Keep your private key with yourself. Show the public key to the world. AWS maybe you can create a key pair to access your machine. There is a way to put your own key pair there as well. But from this dashboard, you can create a new key pair. This is similar to what I was doing yesterday. What was I doing yesterday? I did SSH dash keygen to generate my public private key pair. What is happening over here? 1 second. Create new key pair. I am doing it. AWS is doing it for me. They will give me my private key. I can store it locally. Or I can do it locally and eventually push it to my server as well. Both are fine. The popular thing that companies do is when a new developer comes, let's say Abhay joined my company, I will create a new key pair for Abhay. Key pair का एक अलग section भी होता है on AWS. You can create it from here. You can create it from that separate section as well. And I will generate a new key pair for Abhay. This is the new developer's key pair. I can select, if you remember, there are multiple algorithms of key pairs you can use from yesterday, ED25519 and RSA. Let's say I select an RSA public key. What are these algorithms? These are public private key pair cryptography algorithms that let you, the algorithm that governs कि public key कैसी दिखेगी, private key कैसी दिखेगी, how does the private key sign the message, how does the public key verify the message. You can read the whole algorithm, RSA algorithm. We have covered this in the Web3 cohort as well when we discussed cryptography. And there are two formats for creating public private key pairs. PEM is the one that we usually use. So click on create key pair and it will download the private key for you. What did I do? I created a new private key for my developer. I can send it to them. They can keep it handy. And now I have said that this specific developer has access to my machine. Abhay ka key pair, whoever has this private key can SSH into my machine. Do we remember SSH from yesterday? Secure shell into my machine. DigitalOcean mein, I could use a password. I could use a public private key pair that I have generated locally. Yahan pe you generate the key pair on the dashboard itself. The dashboard has a lot of your key pairs. Why is this good? Because as I create more and more servers, I can just select Abhay from here. And as you can see, Sargam has created an old one as well, or his own one called Webcraft. Ideally, you don't create application specific public private key pairs. You create developer specific or permission specific public private key pairs. For example, admin might be one, manager might be one, developers might be one, testers might be one. And I have created one for my developer Abhay. Network settings. This is important. This is, तो एक बारी को हम recap मार लेते हैं यहाँ तक पहले. अभी तक I have done very simple-ish things. Number one, I selected my OS, Ubuntu. Number two, I selected my key pair, abhay.pem. I also have it downloaded locally. So this key pair is what I will use to connect to my machine. Now comes a very important concept in AWS called security groups. It's called different things in different places. In DigitalOcean, it's called a firewall. In Vultr also it's called a firewall. Here it is called security groups. One big thing about AWS is that by default, when you start a virtual machine, you cannot access it on any port. If the public IP of this virtual machine is, let's say this, and let's say there is a Node.js process running over here. There is a Node.js process running on port 3000 by running node index.js. आप उसको विजिट नहीं कर पाओगे. You cannot go to 2.21.3.1:3000 and visit it. The network will block you. वाई? बिकॉज इट इज गुड. यू शुड कीप योर पोर्ट्स क्लोज्ड जनरली. जो पोर्ट आपको खोलना है वो आप खोल सकते हो. वट वेर एवर यू वॉन्ट टू स्टार्ट योर प्रोसेस यू कैन ओपन दैट स्पेसिफिक पोर्ट, बट मोस्ट ऑफ द पोर्ट्स, ऑल ऑफ द पोर्ट्स शुड बी क्लोज्ड बाय डिफॉल्ट. सिक्योरिटी ग्रुप्स लेट यू डू दैट. ऑपरेटिंग सिस्टम सेलेक्ट किया, कौन कनेक्ट कर सकता है सेलेक्ट किया, हु what ports are open, वो सेलेक्ट करने के लिए यू हैव टू आइदर क्रिएट अ न्यू सिक्योरिटी ग्रुप या सेलेक्ट एन एग्जिस्टिंग सिक्योरिटी ग्रुप. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, Sargam might already have a security group for Webcraft. There is one called Default. There is one called Launch Wizard 1. I am going to create one. This Launch Wizard 1 is probably the one he created for Webcraft. I am going to create a new one called Launch Wizard 2. The reason it is given this name is because I am creating this security group from the Launch Wizard. This is the launch wizard, right? I'm trying to launch an EC2 machine. तो उसको ये default name देता रहता है. There should be a way to change it somewhere here. If I edit, yeah, I can change the name as well. Let me name it backend chat app ports. Description: the ports on the backend chat app machine that should be open. This is me creating a new सिक्योरिटी ग्रुप एंड मैं चाहता हूं, आई वॉन्ट माई एप्लीकेशन टू रन ऑन पोर्ट 3000. फॉर नाउ आई वॉन्ट कि पीपल कैन विजिट माई एप्लीकेशन ऑन पोर्ट 3000 दैट आई एम रनिंग ओवर हियर. तो आई विल से कि यार नंबर 1, SSH एक्सेस शुड बी ओपन. आई शुड बी एबल टू SSH इन टू द मशीन. अगर मैं ये भी हटा दिया देन आई वॉन्ट बी एबल टू SSH इन टू द मशीन ऑल्सो. आई माइट हैव abhay.pem. I have the private key. I can still not SSH into this machine on port 22. The default SSH port is port 22. ये तो खोलना पड़ेगा ही. Otherwise, how will I SSH? How will I clone my GitHub repository? How will I run node index.js? तो by default ये तो आपको खोलना ही चाहिए. You can prevent this also. नीचे जाके there is a user settings section जिसके through you can pull something and start it by default. अगर आपको बहुत सेफ रहना है, if you want to be extremely safe, then you can close the port 22 as well, ताकि even if someone has the private key, they can't access it. For now, port 22 is open, that is fine, and it is open from anywhere. You can also restrict this to only developer IPs. कि यार only हरकीरत can access, और अभी मैं जहाँ बैठा हूँ, wherever I am sitting right now, only this IP can access on port 22. उससे क्या होगा, even if the private key gets leaked, even if abhay.pem gets leaked, port 22 will only be open to my public IP. So only I from my current hotel Wi-Fi will be able to connect to it. If I go back home, तो भी I won't be able to connect to it. It is that strict if you want. अभी के लिए I am saying anywhere, कहीं से भी खोल दो, it is fine. If you remember MongoDB, वहाँ पे भी we had similar rules and we opened the machine. MongoDB, when you are starting from MongoDB, Atlas, whatever, cloud.mongodb.com, वहाँ पे भी there were these network rules if you remember, and we opened it from anywhere. ठीक है, ये तो हमें चाहिए port 22. I want to add a few more rules here. I want कि यार the TCP port, कि यार TCP क्या होता है, HTTP पता है, what are we starting? We are starting an HTTP server. यहाँ पे हम क्या start करेंगे? I'll start node index.js, which is a Express application, an HTTP application, and HTTP under the hood uses the TCP protocol. हरकीरत ये TCP क्या है नया? ट्रांसमिशन कंट्रोल प्रोटोकॉल. हरकीरत ये क्या होता है? तेरा HTTP जो चीज़ है एक, वो आप अपने Node.js एप्लीकेशन में लिखते हो. हाउ डू यू स्टार्ट योर Node.js एप्लीकेशन? const express equal to, const app equal to express. And if you have not used Express, you might have used the HTTP module that Node.js provides. Const app equal to new HTTP, something like this. You start an HTTP server. अभी तक हम क्या बोलते आए हैं? We are starting an HTTP server. HTTP is a application layer protocol. हरकीरत application layer protocol. मैं क्या लिख रहा हूँ? Application लिख रहा हूँ, right? I am writing a जावास्क्रिप्ट एप्लीकेशन. यहाँ पे Usually the code that you write is to start an application layer protocol कि मैं HTTP protocol start कर रहा हूँ. You rarely, even though you can, but rarely do you write कि I want to listen on TCP port, on the TCP protocol on a port. You can write that as well कि I want to listen using the TCP protocol, but TCP is not the application layer protocol, it is what's called a transport layer protocol. वो क्या होता है, computer networks we can get into if need be, but यहाँ पे because I want to open an HTTP server, I am selecting TCP. I can also select all from here or something like that, all traffic if I want कि भाई कोई भी protocol हो आने दो. But since I know कि यार people, I only want people to access an HTTP server here, I can say कि यार TCP protocol खोल दो अभी के लिए, और कोई protocol नहीं खोलनी है. कौन से पोर्ट पे खोलनी है? 3000. If I want, I can put a port range over here कि 3000, 3001, 3002. अगर मुझे मल्टीपल एप्लीकेशंस रन करनी है यहाँ पे, इफ आई ऑल्सो वॉन्ट टू रन अ रिएक्ट एप्लीकेशन, देन आई विल नॉट स्पेसिफाई अ पोर्ट, आई विल स्पेसिफाई अ पोर्ट रेंज. बट अभी के लिए मुझे सिर्फ एक ही एप्लीकेशन स्टार्ट करनी है, तो 3000 इज फाइन. सोर्स टाइप, कहाँ से ट्रैफिक अलाउ करना है? इवेंचुअली माई Node.js एप्लीकेशन, anyone should be able to listen to, anyone should be able to access my chat application. पोर्ट 22 आइडियली सिर्फ मुझे एक्सेस होना चाहिए, किसी और के पास प्राइवेट की है तो भी उनको एक्सेस नहीं होना चाहिए. इफ समवन एल्स हैज द प्राइवेट की, इवन दे शुड नॉट बी एबल टू SSH इनटू माय मशीन. तो यहां पे आइडियली आई शुड हैव नॉट सेलेक्टेड एनीवेयर बट माय ओन IP. अभी के लिए मैंने एनीवेयर कर दिया. यहां पे तो एनीवेयर होना ही चाहिए. फॉर पोर्ट 3000 जहां माय एप्लीकेशन इज रनिंग, आई शुड 100% सेलेक्ट एनीवेयर. कोई भी मेरी मशीन को एक्सेस कर सकता है. नाउ इफ आई वांट कि माय एप्लीकेशन शुड ओनली बी एक्सेसिबल इन इंडिया एंड नोवेयर एल्स, तो आई कैन पुट अ बंच ऑफ इंडिया टॉप लेवल सबनेट्स. सबनेट मतलब जियो की जितनी IPs है डाल दूंगा, एयरटेल की जितनी IPs है डाल दूंगा. दैट वे people outside won't be able to visit, people in India will be able to visit. Or let's say I have a company कि यार Goldman का office has this IP. If you're sitting inside the Goldman office, your public IP will be either this or this or this. It will be this IP range. So I can put that subnet here as well. हकीकत subnet क्या होता है? Don't worry about, basically a bunch of IP ranges is what a subnet is. अभी के लिए again anywhere. Anyone can access my chat application. I don't care if it's accessible only by Goldman people or only by everyone in India. Any IP can access my machine on port 3000. Security groups let you specify this. In fact, you have to explicitly specify this कि क्या खुला है क्या खुला नहीं है. By default, everything will be closed. Harkiyat, then what is the point of the machine? Just because you are starting a virtual machine does not mean it needs to be internet accessible. You might be running a video transcoding service there. Harkiyat, video transcoding service क्या होती है? I might start a machine that might pick a MP4 file, convert it into various versions, video underscore 360p.mp4, video underscore 240p.mp4, video underscore 720p.mp4, and eventually put them somewhere. Does this need to be accessible over the internet? Is anyone going to hit this machine on any port? No. It is pulling traffic. Incoming traffic is always there. Sorry, wrong statement. I can pull traffic from anywhere. यहाँ से I can ping google.com, but google.com cannot reach my server. यहाँ से तो I can access whatever on the internet I want. So for this specific transcoding service, it does not need to be internet accessible. No one is going to hit this service. Another better example might be when you are training a machine learning model. अगर आप आज अपना मशीन लर्निंग मॉडल ट्रेन करते हो, यू ट्रेन इट इनसाइड योर हाउस, राइट, इन अ GPU के लगा दिया छोड़ दिया. नो वन इज विजिटिंग इट कि वो हकीकत की ट्रांसकोडिंग कितनी हो गई, हाउ मच मॉडल हैज ट्रेन्ड अंटिल नाउ ऑन द इंटरनेट. यू डोंट केयर. तो इन दैट केस यू डोंट नीड अ पोर्ट ओपन ऑन द इंटरनेट. बट इफ यू आर क्रिएटिंग अ वेब एप्लीकेशन, chat.100xdevs.com, then of course people will want to visit it. Various people all around the world will hit your server and try to visit your chat application, connect to it via HTTP, get back a response, and hence ports specify करने पड़ते हैं for a web application but it depends on your use case. For some use cases, all ports can be closed as well, including TCP. If you want, you can attach no security group as well. You don't necessarily need to attach a security group, or you can have all protocols closed कि भाई मेरे को तो खोलना ही नहीं है, किसी भी port पे my machine isn't accessible. For now, the machine that I have created, it is a T2.small machine, which means it has 2 vCPUs, whatever the spec was, I did not remember, 4 GB RAM let's say, and 100 GB SSD let's say. And I have opened 2 ports over here, port 22 and port 3000. All other ports are closed. Both of these ports are accessible from everywhere. Ideally, this port should only be accessible from Harkirat's IP because he is the developer who would want to SSH into this machine, ideally. But अभी के लिए मैंने खोल रखा है एकदम open to all around the world. Anyone can SSH, anyone can hit the application on port 3000. Of course, जो SSH करना चाह रहा है, whoever wants to SSH needs to have the private key, which right now only I have. Only I have this private key. I will send it to Abhay, then Abhay also has it. Then only both of us can SSH. Of course, if he loses it or if I share it in the class, then anyone can SSH. Great. That is what network settings over here says. So to recap, give it a name, select the operating system, select the version of the operating system, select the type of the instance. Small is what you have selected. There are various families here. There is the C4 family, C5 family. Some is better for video transcoding, some is better for web applications, some is more optimized for RAM, some is more optimized for storage. So you can, if you get a very nuanced use case where you have a lot of cloud bills and you talk to the AWS support people, they will tell you कि यार T2 small से आप जरा C5 small पे move कर जाओ. The C5 large is better for let's say video transcoding than the T3 large. तो ऐसी बातें वहाँ होती हैं. दे सजेस्ट कि आप इस फैमिली से इस फैमिली पे चले जाओगे तो योर वीडियो ट्रांसकोडिंग एप्लीकेशन विल परफॉर्म बेटर. और यू हैव अ ट्रेडिंग एप्लीकेशन, देन गो फ्रॉम T2 small to let's say T3 small. So each one of these families is better for a specific use case. Some is more optimized for RAM, some is more optimized for storage, so on and so forth. Selected small, selected the key pair, downloaded the key pair, added the network settings. Something very important you have to do, वरना your application you will not be able to access और बाल सारे खराब कर लोगे क्योंकि सब तो चल रहा है क्यों नहीं एक्सेस हो रहा. बिकॉज यू नो दिस इज वेयर यू स्पेंड अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम ट्राइंग टू debug what went wrong. What is this section called? It's called security groups, which is a construct in AWS, just like EC2 is a construct, VPS is a construct, Cloudflare is a construct, S3 is a construct. Security groups is also a construct. कितनी ज़्यादा स्पेस चाहिए? 8 GB is more than enough if you want 16 GB, and that is it. There are some advanced sections over here. ये user data becomes very important in a few specific use cases. Let's not go there. Don't need to worry about this. To recap, let me write down all the steps. Let me open this on the left. Let me open Accelerator on the right. What did I do? Gave my VM a name. Selected the OS. Selected the OS version 24. Selected the instance type, created a new key pair, set it on the server, added a new security group, opened port 3022, added 16 GB storage, and that is it. ये मेरी मशीन की स्पेसिफिकेशंस हैं. I can now click on launch instance over here. As you can see, यहाँ पे it is also telling you कि in your first year 750 hours of T2 micro you can use. So if you have a T2 micro machine, you can run it for 750 hours for free. When you click on launch instance, it starts to launch the instance for you. It says successfully initiated launch of instance. एकदम से तो नहीं बन जाएगा. It will take some time to provision that virtual machine. So now if I go to my EC2 home, as you can see I have a filter here. पिछले पेज पे मैंने इस पे क्लिक किया था तो I have a filter here कि this instance ID मुझे यहाँ दिखा. I can remove the filter. Now I have both the machines. This is Sargam's original machine he's using for Webcraft. This is the machine that we just created. एज यू कैन सी स्टेटस चेक सेज इनिशियलाइजिंग, अभी स्टार्ट नहीं हुई है, धीरे धीरे व्हेन इट सेज 2/2 चेक्स पास्ट देन वी विल से मशीन स्टार्ट हो गई. Again, it is provisioned in South 1A. This is the public IP of it. This is the public IP of it. This is a domain name for that public IP. Security group. When Sargam started his own machine, his security group was called Launch Wizard 1. Let's explore his security group. If you look at Launch Wizard 1, what have I selected? I have selected Sargam's original machine. मेरी वाली नहीं, मेरी वाली तो अभी स्टार्ट नहीं हुई है, विल कम टू इट. हिज ओरिजिनल मशीन, इफ आई गो टू द सिक्योरिटी ग्रुप सेक्शन, इट सेज कि यार ये रहा सिक्योरिटी ग्रुप सरगम का. एंड फॉर सरगम ही हैज पोर्ट 22 ओपन, पोर्ट 443 ओपन, व्हाट इज दैट, एंड पोर्ट 80 ओपन. इज देयर सम सिग्निफिकेंस टू दीज पोर्ट्स? देयर इज, विल कम टू इट. बट मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स व्हेन यू आर स्टार्टिंग यू विल स्टार्ट दीज 3 पोर्ट्स. इन 3 में काम चल जाता है. अभी वी आर जस्ट स्टार्टिंग आउट. तो our security group, if I select my instance over here, click on security, I have port 3000 and port 22 open. Sargam has port 22, 80 and 443 open. ठीक है, cool. It's still initializing. Let's refresh. Nothing much we can do. We'll just have to wait. Let's go through the slides one more time. Did I close the slides? Oh, there you go. What did I do? Clicked on launch instance, gave the instance a name, selected an operating system for the instance, selected the size, created a new key pair, selected a size of my machine, how big or small it will be. Security group शायद यहाँ नहीं है. There you go. Slides में if you look at it, even I am ticking 2 check boxes. Allow HTTPS traffic from anywhere, allow HTTP traffic from the internet. Even in the slides, I did not put port 3000. I checked 2 boxes, which is the same thing Sargam did. That is why for Sargam's machine, the security group has port 443, which is the default HTTPS port, and port 80, which is the default HTTP port. पर इसकी चिंता भी मत करो, slides को भी ignore करो. We created port 3000. We did not check these 2 boxes and started the machine. Now comes the part of connecting to the machine. Machine तो start हो गई. The machine is running now. But if I try to access the machine on port 3000, I see nothing. Why? Because nothing is running on port 3000. अभी तक my full stack to-do application, I have not pulled on the machine. I have not started on the machine. So, what is the next thing I have to do? Connect to the machine. How do you connect to this machine? Harkirat, we did yesterday. We did this, Harkirat. SSH root @IP. So, यही करना होगा Harkirat. We probably have to do this. Yes, very close. We have to run SSH. Since I started Ubuntu, so it needs to be, Ubuntu is the default user on an Ubuntu machine. If you would have started Amazon Linux, then EC2-user is the default user. But for Ubuntu operating system, Ubuntu is the default user @ the IP of the machine. Yeah. SSH Ubuntu @ this. Is this enough? एक चीज मैं मिस कर रहा हूं छोटी सी. I have not specified कि की पेयर कौन सा यूज करना है. What have I missed? I have missed कि यार अभय का की पेयर यूज करना है. I want to use the input key pair will be what? It will be Abhay's PEM file. It will not be my default PEM file. Where is my default RSA keys? It is here in the .ssh folder. ये ID_RSA or ID_RSA.pub. If you remember from yesterday, these are your default key pairs. मुझे ये नहीं यूज करना है. I want to use Abhay's key pair. In fact, I will tell Abhay कि भाई ये जो की पेयर दिया मे बी यहाँ डाल ले, या फिर I will tell Abhay कि यार ये रहा तेरा की पेयर. Where is my key pair right now? It is in my downloads folder. Let me copy it and let me paste it in my root folder. I have pasted abhay.pem in my root folder. तो यहाँ पे basically abhay.pem exists. Now, if I do the same thing, ssh ubuntu @ this thing, I can specify कि यार use this as the input pem file. ssh input pem file is abhay.pem and then connect to the Ubuntu user on this specific IP. You will see an error that comes when you do this, which again, if you try to debug, Stack Overflow will give you the answer. But what is the error saying? It is saying warning, unprotected private key file. I तो ran a simple command, ssh-i abhay.pem ubuntu @ this. But it gave me a warning. It says permission 0644 ये क्या है, for abhay.pem are too open. 0644 is a permission for abhay.pem. ये क्या होता है? So here comes a new concept called permissions on files and folders. ये थोड़ा nuanced, low level, not low level, basic bash command है basically. There is a bash video where I have covered this. Let me quickly do a TLDR, but there will be a dedicated video on, I mean, cohort 2 वाली मैंने डाल दी है. I will do another dedicated video on bash on cohort 3 where I will cover this command. But basically every file that you see, right, every file, for example, I have a .aws file in this folder, I have a .burp suite file, I have a out.txt file. It has something इसके शुरू में .rw-r-r-r something कुछ तो है. Every file that you have has a specific permission. Permission का मतलब होता है, और what this specific, if you want to read this, मैं जल्दी से बता देता हूँ, बाकी we'll cover this in detail. The first three things here mean कि does this user, let's say Harkirat, have access to read this file? Yes. Write on this file? Yes. इसके बाद आते हैं अगले तीन कि ये कोई और यूजर, मे बी ऑन दिस मैक मशीन हैव अ डिफरेंट यूजर कॉल्ड रमन, उसके पास एक्सेस है कि नहीं इसका. राइट एक्सेस नहीं है, रीड एक्सेस है, और तीसरी चीज भी नहीं है. तीसरी चीज क्या होती है? रीड राइट एग्जीक्यूट होता है. आई थिंक तीसरा, कैन दे एग्जीक्यूट दिस फाइल? एंड द सेम थिंग फॉर द लास्ट वन के विच इज एवरीवन एल्स, डू दे हैव एक्सेस टू रीड राइट और execute this file. So every file that you have on Linux has some sort of permissions, read permission, write permission. मैं तो read भी कर सकता हूँ, write भी कर सकता हूँ. The abhay.pem file, if I run cat abhay.pem, I'll be able to read it. If I open it in Visual Studio Code, I'll be able to update it because the abhay.pem file पे the root user, let's find abhay.pem here जल्दी से, ये has read access and write access, which is me. But the other user also has read access. The third, everyone permission level also has read access. So what is the error telling you? Permission 0644 for abhay.pem are too open. 644 कहाँ से आया? Can you guess? If you know binary a little bit, अब ये part अगर नहीं समझ आ रहा ना, ignore करना. If you don't understand this part, ignore it and you know, just copy this command and paste it and continue. So if you don't understand this part, do not get overwhelmed. एक extra command run करनी है, करो and आगे बढ़ जाओ. Do not worry कि वो chmod, binary, what is it you're talking about is fine. We'll come to it eventually. There'll be a bash class जिसमें ये cover करेंगे, ठीक है? Don't worry about ये क्या हो गया. पिछले cohort में भी यहाँ पे overwhelm हो गए थे बहुत लोग. So don't worry about what is happening here. But एक बार जल्दी से बताता हूँ for people who are interested. As I said, there are three permissions, right? There is read, write, and execute. So 111 means कि you have read access, write access, execute access. And if you convert 1112 from binary to decimal, it is 7, right? 1 plus 2 plus 4, जिनको binary पता है. If you convert 010, which is I have read access or whatever, I think read, write पहले होता है, read बाद में होता है, ऐसा होता है. So if I don't have write access, but I have read access, do not have execute access, what will that be? Actually सही था पहले वो. If I do have read access, don't have write access, don't have execute access, that is 4, right? क्योंकि binary conversion of 100 is 4. When you convert binary to decimal, this 100 becomes 4. नहीं समझ आया? डोंट वरी अबाउट इट, बाइनरी टू डेसिमल कन्वर्जन पढ़ लेना थोड़ा, chmod वाली क्लास में भी होगा. बट वॉट इट वॉज टेलिंग अस वॉज कि 644 इज वेरी ओपन बिकॉज पहला गाय हैड रीड एंड राइट एक्सेस, 4 + 2 is 6. दूसरा गाय हैड ओनली रीड एक्सेस 4, थर्ड गाय हैड ओनली रीड एक्सेस 4. 644 is very open permissions. तो what we do is we set permissions to be 700 कि मेरे पास तो सारी एक्सेस है, दूसरे यूजर के पास ना रीड है ना राइट है, एवरीवन एल्स के पास भी ना रीड है ना राइट है. 700 we protect the file कि no one else other than the person who created the file should have read or write access. The person who created the file should have all access. नहीं समझ आया? Ignore. But that is what chmod 700 this thing means. chmod 700 abhay.pem अगर मैं करता हूँ, and now if I do ls-al, you will see abhay.pem कहाँ गई? मैं अंधा हो गया हूँ क्या? ये रही. नाउ abhay.pel में हरकीरत हैज रीड राइट एंड एग्जीक्यूट एक्सेस एंड बाकी किसी के पास कुछ भी नहीं. दैट इज वॉट दिस कमांड डिड. chmod 700 abhay.pem ने क्या किया? abhay.pem जो फाइल है इस पे हरकीरत हैज 111 एक्सेस, read write execute that is 7, other person has no access that is 0, third person also has no access. That is what the chmod command does. क्यों किया हमने ये? Why did we do this? Because AWS was like ना this file is too open, इसको थोड़ा प्रोटेक्ट करो पहले. तो we protected the file now, and now if I try to SSH I will be able to. So this is one extra thing you have to do the first time you download the PEM file, which is change the permissions on your file system for the PEM file. If you're on Windows, so you have to open some dialog box and do it. If you have bash, then you can just use bash to do it. ये हो गया. I SSH'd into the machine. If you look at it, now when I ran SSH-i abhay.pem ubuntu@IP, मैं मशीन के अंदर घुस गया हूँ. If you look at it, what does it say here? It says ubuntu at the name of this specific machine. It does not say this tilde. This is my machine. This is the Ubuntu machine. So do we now understand how to start a VM, how to make sure port 22 is open, and how to connect to it? Let's do a poll. One difficult thing we did, which is this chmod command. इसको छोड़ के at least do we understand? अभी बाकी सब तो सेम है जैसे कल किया था. Only difference is rather than creating my file myself, I used AWS to create the PEM file so that Abhay user exists there always, and I can assign Abhay to future instances as well. If in the future I launch a new instance, then in key pair I can just select Abhay. Abhay needs to have access to this specific new instance in the future. I have this stored in AWS. Let's do a poll. Are we able to understand how to start a machine which has port 22 and port 3000 open and connect to it using the SSH protocol? 90% is beautiful. तो इसके बाद comes the easy bit यार. इसके बाद you just have to clone the project and run node index.js. उसमें क्या है? There is a repo from cohort 2 that you can clone if you want. It is a simple express server. Don't worry about the code. It's an express server, a to-do application, in-memory to-do application. भूल जाओ application logic क्या है. But does it look like an express server? Yes, Harkirat. Does it use TypeScript? No, Harkirat. Harkirat, if you use TypeScript, what we will do? Simple है, ज़्यादा difficult नहीं है. Assume अभी के लिए JavaScript project है that we are trying to deploy. We are trying to deploy this JavaScript project, which is an open repository. It is not a private repository. It is a public repository. All of you can access it. So I can clone it onto my machine. I will select HTTPS here. I will not select SSH. हकीकत कल तो SSH हो गया था, हाँ, but वो SSH की मेरी मशीन में थी. It is not on this Ubuntu machine, so I cannot use SSH as the protocol. It might work since it is an open source project. I don't know, as in it's a public repository. But let's go with HTTPS. Git clone project name. Very quickly, it was able to clone the repository. I have some server, all of this code now cloned on my Ubuntu machine, not on my local map. Where did I run this command? On the Ubuntu machine. Where is this server created? On my Ubuntu machine. So if I go to my Ubuntu machine, do a cd sum server, looks like a very nice basic Node.js application. तो अब क्या करना है मुझे? Can I run npm install? ये तो करना होता है, npm install node index.js. अभी there is no node modules folder here. When you commit to GitHub, you do not commit your node modules. You just have a package.json which has all of your dependencies. So when I run npm install, those dependencies will actually come. The same happens in Golang. The same happens in Rust. You have a cargo.toml file. Here you have a package.json file. So when you run npm install, actually dependencies आपके node modules folder में आती हैं. Actual dependencies come to your node modules folder. But if I run this, it says node तो है ही नहीं. Node does not come by default in Ubuntu. Git does come by default in Ubuntu, which is why git clone I was able to do. npm install I was not able to do. So what do I have to do next? Install Node.js over here. There are various ways. One blog post I always follow is this DigitalOcean blog post. वैसे तो nvm ये भी चल जाएगा, sudo apt get install node. This will also run if you want to install, node the naive way. But usually node has this node version manager. If you remember our original class, when we installed Node.js on our machines, we used the same path. The same we are going to do now. अब I already have node on my machine. अगर मैं साइड में अपनी मशीन खोलूं, npm exists as a command. Node exists as a command. I don't want to install node on my machine. I want to install it on this Ubuntu machine. तो this Ubuntu machine में I can run this bash command. ये command क्या कर रही है? कुछ नहीं कर रही. This is a publicly available URL which has a very big shell script. It's a very big shell script which runs a bunch of commands that gets nvm onto your machine. वही same चीज I am piping to bash. यहाँ पे मैं ये भी कर सकता हूँ. I can go to this URL, I can copy the whole thing and I can paste it over here. That will do the same thing as this command. Curl -o this URL will get all of those contents and pipe bash will pipe those contents to my terminal. तो या तो ये कर लो और go over here to the URL, copy the whole thing, paste it in your AWS machine, good to go. Let me use the fancy command here. Did a bunch of things. Endmate told me something. कि यार ये रन कर लो वरना हालत खराब हो जाएगी. कह रहा है तो कर लो. Or if you don't want to run this, stop your machine and restart, or just source bash rc. हकीकत क्या किया आपने अभी? Don't worry about it. When we learn about bash, we learn about bash rc और वो क्या करती है. But अभी के लिए इसने हमें clearly बोला, close and open your terminal to start using nvm, or run the following command to use it now. तो either I could have closed and re-ssh'd, वो भी चल जाता, or it said ये रन कर लो, तो मैंने ये रन कर लिया. First command I ran was this, and then इसके बाद ही इसने मुझे बोला ये रन कर लो. I ran this also. ये रन करने की जरूरत भी नहीं है. You can also just run this. ठीक है, और follow the instructions. पहले run this, then run this. उसके बाद if you run nvm list remote, it will give you all the versions of node that exist. And हमें एक specific version install करना है. Let's say we want to install the latest version. So I can use nvm install --lts. That will install the latest LTS version. LTS versions क्या होते हैं जो अभी public नहीं है, but people can start testing them. So that's very close to new, but it's उसमें कुछ bugs हो सकते हैं. So it's a good idea to not use LTS but one version before. But we have used node version LTS, which is this one right here. If I run node-v, it tells me now I have Node.js on my machine. तो अब क्या बचा? Again, what I did is just install Node.js using these commands. आपको जो command से करना है कर लो. As long as npm exists as a command here, as long as node exists as a command here, you are good to go. So if you want to use a different way, use a different way, but get Node.js to install on your server. That is all we want to do here. I followed this blog post, which gave me simple steps. This to see a specific bash file, तो ये run करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. This to actually execute a bash file. This to source bash RC. Don't worry about what source is, what bash RC is. Don't need to run this. It will just show you all the versions of Node. They installed version 14. We installed latest version. So I just have latest version over here. If I would have run this, then I would have had version 14 of Node.js. I don't want that. I want the latest version. Now that I have Node, I can run npm install to install all the dependencies. हो गई. If I press ls, I can see the node modules folder. Great. We have Node.js installed on our machine. We brought in the dependencies to our machine. क्या बचा? Node index.js. खत्म. We have a Node.js process running on our machine. What is the Node.js process? It is this very big express server. If I go to the end, it is listening on port 8080. That's a problem. हमने तो port 3000 खोला था. This is running on port 8080. What did we do when we created our security group? When we created our security group, we opened port 3000 and we opened port 22. We did not open port 8080. So what can we do? Either I can change this to port 3000 or I can open a new port over here. I can click on my instance, go to the security tab over here, click on my instance, go to the security tab, open the security group, change the inbound rules. कि यार पहले तो 3000 पे ओपन था, edit inbound rules, या तो मैं इसको 8080 पे चेंज कर दूंगा कि I don't want to keep 3000 open, I want to keep 8080 open, or I can have this and add another rule कि यार port 8080 should also be accessible from anywhere IPv4, and generally it's a good idea कि it is always accessible from anywhere IPv6. This one is not really needed, this is the one that is actually needed. Now port 8080 मैंने खोल दिया, 3000 already खुला हुआ था, port 22 is also open, save rules. Now my security rules have changed a bit. इसमें port 8080 जुड़ गया है, पहले only port 3000 was there. Why did I do this? क्योंकि मेरी जो index.js है, that is listening on port 8080. My express server by default I was starting on 8080. That is why. Node index.js. That's it. I have a internet deployed application. I can go to my machine का IP. This is my machine. This is my machine का IP. I can go to this IP colon 8080 and I see a express server running. The express server has a to-dos endpoint. I can go to the to-dos endpoint and see all the to-dos. It has a bunch of other endpoints, I can see those. So my backend is deployed. Great. There are some problems. The backend URL looks very ugly. It says not secure over here. There is some port that I have to specify. Google.com में तो ये नहीं करना पड़ता. When I go to google.com, I don't have to specify this. I don't have to write an IP over here. I simply write google.com. I don't see not secure over here. I see HTTPS. In my website, I see not secure over here. So there are a few things we have to do to be able to go from here to here. That is what we'll understand next. But abhi ke liye, I have on this IP, on this port, my application running. Should you send this to your friend? Can you deploy this as a market? Can you start marketing it? No. You have to attach a domain name to it. That is what we'll understand next. But internet पे deploy जरूर हो गई है. If any one of you go here also, you will be able to visit it now. It's an internet facing application. If I go to my security rules and delete port 8080, if I delete these two rules, then you won't be able to. Or if I stop this process then also you won't be able to, because I have stopped my process now. If I restart my process, then you will be able to. Simple enough. Let's do a poll. Do we understand how to deploy backends for now, but front end remains very similar? Clone a React project, run npm run build, run npm run start. Or if you don't want to get this fancy, run npm run dev चल गया. तो React projects, even though you shouldn't deploy them here, वो अगली वीडियो आएगी, offline video on how you deploy React projects to AWS. It's a cohort 2 video, it's a very nice video. This is how you deploy backends. थोड़ा फर्क होता है. You should not use EC2 for front end deployments, or more technically React deployments, but we'll come to why later. Let's do a poll. Do we understand this अभी तक? Do we understand until slide number 6? 94% understand. So now comes the last part for today, I would think, because this will take a lot of time and I have a hard stop in some 30 minutes. Reverse proxies. तो यहाँ दिमाग खराब होगा. तो you know, take a breather, 1 minute break, then we'll get into the problem with our website, then we'll get into a solution of fixing that problem. There is a very specific problem right now for which we need Nginx. What is Nginx? हरकीरत नया वर्ड फेंक दिया. It is a reverse proxy. हरकीरत, what is a reverse proxy? We'll come to it. नाम थोड़ा गिविंग है. Reverse proxy. Forward proxies तो आपने करी होंगी. If you are in a campus that blocks certain URLs, you might have put a proxy URL. You might have heard of VPNs. What is a reverse proxy? कुछ उसका उल्टा. We'll come to what it is. And you know why you need Nginx. And if we want to go from here to something like this, one thing we have to do is introduce reverse proxies. वैसे इसके बिना भी काम चल जाएगा. You don't have to do this. But you know there are reasons why you should do this. We'll come to those reasons very soon. Another 30-second break, then we'll start. We'll do for another 30 minutes, then I'll have to call it. एक slide बचती है certificate management, that I'll do offline. There might be a cohort to offline video that I can post as well, but we'll see. This will take time and you know some digestion. This is a mildly hard concept, but Nginx is very useful. If you understand Nginx, it's used in a lot of places. Unsure if it comes to GSOC, but I think Apache does. Sorry, Nginx doesn't. Apache does. Apache is very similar. It lets you do similar things. But Nginx, Apache, and HA proxy, even दिमाग से निकल गया मेरे. वो चौथी वाली का क्या नाम है? Very common load balancer proxy, reverse proxy. What is it called? Traffic, I think. Yeah, traffic. Does anyone know any other? So traffic is another one. Cool, no problem at all. ठीक है. These are 4 good buzzwords to know. Eventually, when we reach Kubernetes, then also Nginx will come back. If you go to projects.nginxdevs.com, you will see a slide on. If you search for Nginx, there is something called Nginx ingress controller that will eventually come. So don't shy away from this. We will eventually need this in other places as well. Even though ऊपर से हो जाएगी अगली वाली चीज, here we have to go and get into little bit of internals of Nginx. So let's get right into it. Nginx. पहले ये छोड़ दो. Why are we introducing Nginx? There are 2 reasons. One is this, कि there is a ugly port over here. Google.com does not have a port. Our website has a port. We don't want this. We want people to come over here. Of course, we want to replace this with the domain also. वो हम already भी कर सकते हैं वैसे. As I said, Amazon gives you an IP. Amazon also gives you a domain name. So I can actually do this also and reach the same website. So this is done. Domain name wala part is done. Ugly part is this. How do we get rid of this? How does Google get rid of this? Google क्या सही कर रहा है? Why on google.com I don't have to specify anything? Because if you are specifying HTTPS over here, इसका default मतलब होता है कि the port is 443. If I go to google.com or I go to this, it means the same thing. ऐसा नहीं है कि when you go to google.com you don't specify a port. It is assumed because you are hitting the HTTPS protocol. If I click on inspect and refresh, go to google.com headers. As you can see, under the hood google.com hits this IP :443. I did not have to specify :443 here because शुरू में अगर HTTPS होता है उसका मतलब होता है कि एंड में 443 है, डालने की जरूरत नहीं है. You don't have to explicitly specify this. The same is true for our website. हमारी वेबसाइट अभी is hosted on HTTP. It is not hosted on HTTPS. उसमें बहुत challenges हैं. That is what the last slide is about. Certificate management. अभी के लिए our website is hosted on HTTP and HTTP का default port is 80. तो going to this website is the same as going to this website. You specify 80, you don't specify 80, it is the same thing. Similar to google.com. You specify 443, you don't specify 443, it is exactly the same thing. तो अब हमें किसी तरीके से एप्लीकेशन को पोर्ट 80 पे ही तो रन करना है. इफ आई रन माई एप्लीकेशन ऑन पोर्ट 80, देन आई डोंट हैव टू स्पेसिफाई पोर्ट 80 हियर, वो अज्यूम हो जाएगा खुद ही, एंड यूजर कैन सिंपली गो टू दिस वेबसाइट. अब तो क्लीन लग रही है, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. यू कैन शेयर दिस विद योर फ्रेंड्स कैन विजिट दिस, लुक्स ग्रेट. तो वन वे टू गेट रिड ऑफ दिस अगली :8080 दैट वी सॉ, इसके Node.js प्रोसेस को पोर्ट 80 पे चला दो ना, खत्म. Rather than starting the Node.js process on port 8080 or 3000 or 3001 or 5173, started on port 80. काम खत्म. तो ट्राई करते हैं. I will go here, I will open index.js, I will go to the end and replace 8080 with 80. यार अगर ये पोर्ट 80 पे चल गई ना तो काम चल जाएगा, because then our users don't have to explicitly specify a port here. इतने में काम चल जाएगा फिर. क्यों? क्योंकि अगर आप नहीं करते हो स्पेसिफाई तो वो देखता है प्रोटोकॉल कौन सी. अच्छा HTTP प्रोटोकॉल है तो यहाँ पे 80 ही है. सेम इज ट्रू फॉर गूगल. इट सीज अच्छा HTTP इज द प्रोटोकॉल, अज्यूम्स 443 ओवर हियर. तो कैन आई स्टार्ट अ Node.js प्रोसेस ऑन पोर्ट 80? आई रिप्लेस्ड इट विद पोर्ट 80. मैंने index.js खोली, आई रिप्लेस्ड 8080 विद 80 ओवर हियर. If I run node index.js, it says unhandled event error, e-access permission denied 80. It says कि आपकी जो ये node service है does not have access to start anything on port 80. Port 80, port 443, port 22, telnet port मैं भूल गया कौन सा होता है, 13 होता है शायद. These are very, the OS prevents anyone from starting anything over there. You can't just run node index.js on port 8080. Run it on 3000, it's fine. 3001, it is fine. 80 पे नहीं चला सकते. You might be able to run it as sudo user, I don't know. Super user, sorry. इंस्टॉल करना पड़ेगा. Most probably you'll be able to run it as sudo. तो sudo user क्या होता है? Don't worry about it. There might be ways to start it. Basically मैं कह रहा हूँ कि ऐसा नहीं है कि Node.js process नहीं चल सकती. If you give Node some very heavy access, then Node will be able to start something on port 80. But अभी तो नहीं चल रहा है. अगर ये चल जाता, if this would have started, then तो भैया my problem was solved. I could have just given this to my friends. Port वाला अगली part मुझे नहीं देना पड़ता. But since I'm not able to start it, and also there is a second problem here. चलो मान लो I was able to give node some heavy access so that it would be able to run something on port 80. Then this would have worked. But there is one more problem in doing this. Can anyone try to guess? Even if I was able to start Node.js on port 80, let's say I was able to do this. Let's say this command ran. Let's say I was able to visit my website here. There is still one more problem other than HTTPS. Anyone want to take a stab at what that problem is? DNS security. So security group, assume I changed. Can't run more processes is the answer I was looking for. सारे शिप कोड तो टू डू ही होते. Can't start multiple apps on the same port. ये था आंसर इसका. देखो अभी you don't have a very big startup. You have a very small startup called sellclothes.com, let's say. So you started node index.js and let's say you were able to expose it on port 80. Now you said this application is running, no one is using it. I want to start a new startup. sellshoes.com. So you cloned iski repository over here. You already have shoes/index.js. You added another, sorry, you already have clothes/index.js. You added another one, shoes/index.js. You can't run both of them on the same port. This you ran on port 80, that is fine. So any request that's coming on port 80 will go over here. You can't start the second one on the same port. There will be a port conflict. Two processes cannot take the same port. Two processes cannot take port 3000, cannot take 3001, cannot take port 80. Even if one of them is able to do it, second one will not be able to do it. Harkirat, I will start another machine. Sure, you can do that, but that's, you're over provisioning, right? You don't need, until you have the first 10 scrappy startups, single server पे deploy everything. You need to find a way कि यार अगर पोर्ट 80 पे ही रिक्वेस्ट आ रही है फ्रॉम sellclothes.com, then it should go here. और अगर पोर्ट 80 पे ही रिक्वेस्ट आ रही है on sellshoes.com, then that should go here. We need something that will make sure sellclothes.com on port 80 points to this process, sellshoes.com on port 80 points to this process. This URL ec2 whatever.com points to our third random to do application. We need a reverse proxy. Nginx is an open source software used for web scraping, caching, load balancing, media streaming, multiple things. But one thing it is used for is a reverse proxy. Harkirat, what is a reverse proxy? For that, we need to understand what is a proxy. If this is your college campus and this is you, your friend in your hostel mate or whatever, another person, and you try to visit, I don't know, some by MIT.com, but let's say MIT.com/research papers. But MIT has blocked this for IIT Roorkee people, कि they are competition, so we will not allow them to access it. So what, in your browser, have you ever tried putting a proxy? You put a proxy in your browser so that the request goes from your browser to some other server on the internet, जहाँ से it proxies over here, so that MIT.com thinks request यहाँ से आई है, they allow you in, they send you the response. That's a forward proxy. VPNs are very similar. You guys know VPNs, I know. Use it for many things. VPN भी तो same ही करता है. If this is me in India, I can connect to a VPN in Japan, and then all I see is blur videos. What the fuck? Very bad joke. So you select what location I want to go to, or proxy through, so that MIT.com or a different website thinks the request is coming from Japan. That is why all the recommendations are from Japan. If you ever started a VPN and visited YouTube, आपको वहाँ की ads आने लग जाएंगी Burger King की, rather than McDonald's from India. Why? Because YouTube thinks request is coming from US, even though request is coming from actual mates coming from India. That's a forward proxy. What is a reverse proxy? Forward proxy समझ आ गई? Do it, try it out. Visit some website that's not accessible in it. Stake.com is a good example. Go to stake.com, नहीं खुलेगा. Start a VPN from US, go to stake.com, खुल जाएगा. Because stake.com will think US से request आ रही है, but actually the request is coming from India. That's a forward proxy. What we are building is a reverse proxy. This is my EC2 machine. आई वॉन्ट कि जब भी कोई रिक्वेस्ट आए ना पोर्ट 80 पे, आई डोंट वॉन्ट it to immediately go to a process. I might have two processes running, node index.js for my shoes application and node index.js for my clothes application. I can start it at port 80, then this will work, but then I can't start this at port 80. If I start this at port 80, then all requests will go here, but I can't start this at port 80. So what you do is, you start this on port 3000, you start this on port 3001, so that if someone comes on port 3000, they reach over here. If someone comes on port 3001, they reach over here. इसमें प्रॉब्लम क्या थी? URL looked very ugly. URL had a :3000 :3001. तो रिवर्स प्रॉक्सी क्या होती है कि यार Nginx says I will run on port 80. Screw your clothes selling application, screw your shoe selling application. Let them run on 3000 3001, that is fine. Port 80 पे मैं रन करूंगी. I will run on port number 80. Any incoming request will directly come to me and I will forward it either over here or over here based on the URL. अगर sell shoes.com से आई, if the URL is this, then I will take it over here. अगर sell clothes.com से आई, then I will take it over here. Nginx says I am running as a reverse proxy. Harkirat is not sending a request to US which is going to stake.com. A user is sending a request to Nginx which is getting proxied ulta to a process. That's why it's called a reverse proxy. It's not technically reverse. It just makes sense कि हाँ forward proxy में I initiate the request to a proxy जहाँ से वो कहीं जाती है. Reverse proxy में I initiate to the direct server और सर्वर इंटरनली यहाँ या यहाँ भेज देता है. दैट इज व्हाट अ रिवर्स प्रॉक्सी इज. थोड़ा एकदम उल्टा है नहीं है. रिवर्स प्रॉक्सी इज अ लिटिल कंफ्यूजिंग बिकॉज इट्स नॉट एग्जैक्टली द ऑपोजिट, बट स्टिल यू नो इसको रिवर्स प्रॉक्सी कहते हैं. क्या होती है रिवर्स प्रॉक्सी? पोर्ट 80 पे द प्रोसेस दैट इज रनिंग इज फॉरवर्डिंग द रिक्वेस्ट आइदर ओवर हियर और टू अ डिफरेंट प्रोसेस बेस्ड ऑन यूआरएल. क्या है यूआरएल? इज समथिंग, रिक्वेस्ट गोज हियर, समथिंग एल्स इट गोज हियर. What is a reverse proxy? If this is your EC2 server and you have, let's say, backend1.100xdevs.com का process running on 8081, backend2.100xdevs.com का process running over here, Nginx will ensure कि यार both of them are pointing to the same IP. Both of my startups are running on the same server. I don't have money to rent multiple servers. तो मैंने एक बड़ा server खरीद लिया. I started multiple process there. There might be 10 startups. 8080, 8081, 8082, 8083 ऐसे. पर इनकमिंग रिक्वेस्ट Nginx हैंडल कर रहा है. इट इज हाईली ऑप्टिमाइज्ड. इवन लोड बैलेंसर्स दैट यू माइट हैव हर्ड ऑफ, जो मिलियंस ऑफ रिक्वेस्ट लेते हैं और उनको डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करते हैं, इवन दोज लोड बैलेंसर्स ऑल्सो यूज समथिंग लाइक Nginx और HA proxy. Some clouds have written it, some clouds have their own version of HA proxy, but it is highly optimized to forward requests. Don't think कि extra hop आ गया तो it will be slow. It will be slow, but it won't be that slow. Nginx is highly optimized to be a reverse proxy. What is a reverse proxy? Incoming request I, based on the URL, either it went here or it went here. एक बार चला लेते हैं, then we can come back to it कि हाँ भाई क्या थी reverse proxy. थोड़ा confusing है, थोड़ा समझ आ रहा है, थोड़ा समझ नहीं आ रहा. What was our original problem? Original problem was this कि right now the application is hosted on this ugly looking URL. If I open index.js and make this 8080 and run node index.js, my application is hosted on an ugly looking URL. I wanted to make it look pretty, तो I said मैं port 80 पे चला देता हूँ. पोर्ट 80 पे मैं नहीं चला सकता, आई कांट रन इट ऑन पोर्ट 80, तो आई स्टार्ट Nginx ऑन पोर्ट 80. व्हाट कैन आई डू? आई कैन स्टार्ट अ वेरी पॉपुलर रिवर्स प्रॉक्सी ऑन पोर्ट 80 कि भाई तू 80 पे चल जा, एनी इनकमिंग रिक्वेस्ट यू विल हैंडल एंड आई विल टेल यू व्हाट टू फॉरवर्ड वेयर, वो विल कम टू. पहले Nginx स्टार्ट कर देते. 2 commands you have to run on an Ubuntu machine to start Nginx. Sudo apt update followed by sudo apt install Nginx. So if you have a VM right now, try running this. If you run these 2 commands, you will see Nginx server will start on port 80. ये होने लग जाएगा. Any incoming request on the machine will start going over here. It is not yet forwarding it. वो अभी हमने नहीं किया है. But port 80 पे हमने कुछ नया ही चला दिया. We started something new on port 80. Not a Node.js process, not a React application, not a Next.js application, a reverse proxy. देखते हैं कैसी दिखती है. Let's click on yes over here. Wait for it to install. And once it is done, just to confirm, you can run sudo nginx -s reload. This is fine. This will restart Nginx. करने की जरूरत नहीं है, उसके बिना में चल जाएगा. Let's try to go to our pretty looking URL. EC26521 ये on port 80. Nothing is coming. Why? I to have started something over here. But did I expose port 80 here? Did I go to my EC2 machine, security group and open port 80 here? I did not. Sargam had did it for his machine. If you see Sargam's security rule, it has port 80 and 443 open. If you see mine, I don't have port 80 open. So Nginx has started running. But since I haven't opened port 80, I am not able to send requests there. So what will I do? I will open port 80 over here. Open the security group. Click on edit inbound rules. Add a rule, custom TCP port 80. From anywhere IPv4, custom TCP port 80. Anywhere IPv6. और यहाँ पे HTTP का डायरेक्ट ऑप्शन भी होता है. HTTP डिफॉल्ट पोर्ट ऑफ HTTP इज 80. देखो ये 80 बन गया बाय डिफॉल्ट. तो आई कुड हैव ऑल्सो सेलेक्टेड HTTP फ्रॉम हियर. तो दिस वुड हैव बाय डिफॉल्ट बीन 80 या TCP डाल के 80 डाल दो. सेव रूल्स. रूल्स हैव चेंज्ड. नाउ इफ आई गो हियर ऑन पोर्ट 80 एंड पुट HTTP इन द बिगिनिंग, कुछ तो चल गया. I am hosting something very ugly on my website. This is my website. It should have hosted a clothes application, but seems like it's hosting something else. Welcome to Nginx. If you see this page, the Nginx web server is successfully installed and working. Further configuration is required. आपने ये तो कर दिया, आपने ये नहीं किया. You have not yet told Nginx कि यार इनकमिंग रिक्वेस्ट फ्रॉम हियर शुड गो टू पोर्ट 8080, इनकमिंग रिक्वेस्ट फ्रॉम हियर शुड गो टू पोर्ट 8081. तो जस्ट टू सी दिस इन एक्शन विद मल्टीपल डोमेन्स, लेट मी पॉइंट 2 domains to my server. Let me point 2 of these domains to the new server that I have. I have already bought a domain. Domains.squarespace.com is where I have bought it. You might have your own on whatever service. GoDaddy is a popular one. So let me log in here. Just 1 second. $769,969. Once I log in over here, click on manage domains, go to 100xdevs.com, go to DNS. I can add more records over here. This is how you point domains. Whenever I started a new website, for example, school.100xdevs.com points to this IP. roulette.100xdevs.com points to this IP. review.100xdevs.com points to this CNAME different thing. So I can add another record here. Here, class URL1 or clothes app, clothesapp.100xdevs.com should point to as a record. There are various types of records. We'll come to what those are, क्या significance होता है. The important ones are a, txt, 4 times a and mx, ns, txt and एक और होना चाहिए CNAME. These are the important ones. We'll come to what these are. अभी के लिए, even on GoDaddy, you can put a record and put the IP address of your server. मेरे सर्वर का IP address क्या था? My server's IP address was this. So on GoDaddy.com, I said your clothesapp.100xdevs.com will also point here. And shoesapp.100xdevs.com will also point to the same machine. अब इसमें होता क्या है, it takes some time for this DNS to propagate. थोड़ी देर लगती है, sometimes hours for this to propagate all around the world. How can I confirm कि ये हो गया कि नहीं? I can ping shoes.100xdevs.com. क्या कह रहा है? अच्छा shoes app था, sorry. Seems like it is pointing to the server on the Ubuntu machine. मतलब मुंबई में तो DNS has propagated. Let me try over here. Ping shoesapp.100xdevs.com. जहाँ पे मैं हूँ, there also it has propagated. So mostly now if I go to shoesapp.100xdevs.com, I see the same thing. If I go to clothesapp.100xdevs.com, I see the same thing. So now I have set these two DNSs. Mine are called different, slides have it different, but I have two DNSs pointing to Nginx. But मैंने Nginx को configure नहीं किया है. I have not started two processes. I have not configured Nginx to take request from one of them, send it over here, take request from other one and send it over here. That is the job of a reverse proxy. So to go from here to here, you have to change the Nginx configuration. What did this say? If you see this page, Nginx is running successfully. Further configuration is required. उसको बताना पड़ेगा कि shoes app needs to go to process number 1 and clothes app needs to go to process number 2. So let me quickly start two processes. Let me start two different processes, one on 8080, one on 8081. On my server, I already have a some server. Let me open another terminal, SSH. Now both of these terminals are connected to the same machine. यहाँ पे on 8080, I will start my default to do application. In the second terminal, let me copy some server, or let me create either is fine. Let me copy some server to some server 2. Let me go to some server 2. Let me change a few things here. Let me delete everything. App.listen 8081 and let me do a app.get slash clothes app. What am I doing? I am creating a second Node.js process that is a dummy process that's serving the clothes app. This one is the one that you see on the left is serving the other app. This is running on port 8080. This is running on port 8081. तो I have started two Node.js processes. ये 8080 पे चल रही है, ये 8081 पे चल रही है. I have started this, I have started this. I have not done this right now. I have not told Nginx कि request from shoes app should go here, clothes app should go here. For that, you have to update the Nginx configuration. What is it saying? Update the Nginx, further configuration is required. All Nginx configuration कि यार यहाँ से यहाँ point होना चाहिए, यहाँ से यहाँ point होना चाहिए, happens in a file called, let me open a third terminal, let me SSH from here also, sudo v/etc/nginx/nginx.conf. This is the place or the configuration file for nginx /etc/nginx/nginx.conf. nginx की configuration यहाँ store होती है. Why did I write sudo over here? Sudo stands for super user do, because ये चीज super user को करनी पड़ेगी, because you're editing a file in /etc/nginx. It has some defaults in there. God knows what this is. कुछ तो अजीब सी configuration file है. Let me get rid of everything here. And let me copy this configuration and I'll explain what this is. This configuration says कि यार on using the HTTP protocol, using the HTTP protocol, start a server that listens on port 80. Any request that is, sorry, not start a server, this means, थोड़ा इसको ग्लोबल तरीके से पढ़ने की कोशिश करते हैं कि तो बहुत कॉम्प्लिकेटेड है, बट any HTTP request that is coming on port 80, that is coming from, जिसका सर्वर नेम इज clothes app.100xdevs.com, that should reverse proxy to the process running on port 8080. And similarly, I can add another server here, listen 80, server name क्या नाम था, shoes app.100xdevs.com. Any request that comes to shoesapp.100xdevs.com/anything, prefix भी डाल सकते हो यहाँ पे, but without a prefix, any request that's coming over here should proxy to /8081. इसको छोड़ के there are a bunch of options that are not really needed for HTTP, they are needed for WebSockets. So let me add them and also take you through them. But everything from here to here you don't really need for HTTP. Some of these you might actually, but most of it you don't need for HTTP, you need it for WebSockets. Specifically, this proxy header connection upgrade, that and this you need for WebSockets, like if you're proxying to a WebSocket server, but the rest of them, this and these two, not even this and this is the only two parameters that you need. ये भी वैसे नहीं चाहिए. This is just to forward the host header. अगर हरकीरत is trying to access host header, क्या होता है, मतलब छोड़ दो, मतलब basically when you are on a front end and try to hit a back end, you send a referrer over there, you have a host header, वो forward करना है कि नहीं is what that file line means. Doesn't matter, नहीं समझ आ रहा है, is fine, ignore for now. Let's look at the Nginx file one more time कि हो क्या रहा है यहाँ पे. Nginx configuration files are very ugly and hard to write. If you have ever written Nginx, or if you ever write in the future Nginx for HLS streaming, what else does Nginx let you do? It is used for media streaming. So this is another common use case. आप जब लिखोगे तब भी थोड़ा the way you write its syntax is a little weird. It's not simple JSON, something else. The way to parse it is a little different. JSON नहीं है ये, TOML भी नहीं है, it's a little hard to read. We say कि यार जब भी कोई request is coming on port 80 that is coming on closed.app.handexapps.com, forward it over here. जब भी there is a request coming on port 80 from shoesapp.handexapps.com, forward it over here. These are the 3 lines that you need to keep on changing as you add more projects to the same server. If you add a earring shop in the future, or I don't know, swim shop in the future, so these sections you will have to keep on adding. This file becomes very big as you have 100 projects running on the same server. What is this section telling Nginx? This is the default Nginx configuration file. यहाँ पे हम Nginx को कॉन्फ़िगर कर रहे हैं कि यार whenever a request is coming on port 80 with this URL, with this domain name, proxy it over here. Whenever it is coming on this domain name, proxy it over here. Sudo nginx -s reload should reload Nginx, and now if I go to localhost if I go to shoes app, it उल्टे कर दिए मैंने. shoesapp.handexapps.com is taking me to clothes app now, and clothes app is taking me to the process running on port 8080. वो flip करने पड़ेंगे. You get the idea. मैं कर ही देता हूँ. Sudo nginx reload. Now if I go to clothes.app.handexapps.com, it takes me to the clothes app. If I go to shoes.app.handexapps.com, it takes me to the other process. तो क्या ये चीज हो गई? shoesapp.handexapps.com is pointing to Nginx, which is forwarding it over here. clothes.app.handexapps.com is pointing over here, which is forwarding it over here. So were we able to create 2 clean URLs that are pointing to one application? This one's pointing to the other application. इसके default कुछ है नहीं, but if I go to /todos, you see here todos ही तो था. I forgot what this application was hosting. I thought it was /todos. Oh, HTTPS. There you go. If I go to /todos, I see the to-do application यहाँ वाली पे. If I go to / I see clothes app over here. So this thing we were able to achieve. Start one process on port 8080, one process on port 8081, expose everything via port 80 so that people have clean URLs like this. People don't need to put something :8080, something :8081. In fact, ये दोनों ports तो बंद हैं. We have not opened port 8081 at all. Port 8081 isn't open. 8080 is open, but we don't need to open it. We just need to open port 80. Request यहाँ से proxy होते हुए यहाँ चली जाएगी. User should not be able to hit 8081. User should not be able to hit 80. User should only be able to hit 80, and यहाँ से forward होनी चाहिए request. That is why Sargam's machine only has 443 and 80 open. 80 is for HTTP, 443 is for HTTPS. Abhi there is another problem. It says not secure over here. It says not secure over here. How do you fix that? We'll come into the next class, or you can quickly read through the next slide. कुछ है नहीं पढ़ने को, you'll have to go through certbot. But that's how you move from HTTP to HTTPS. खत्म. That is the dumb way to deploy merge stack applications. Backends. Frontends is a whole different ball game. We'll come to them when we come to them. But this is how you deploy backends. ठीक है? How many of us understood? Reverse proxies are a little hard. Totally get if you were not able to digest it. So happy to look at Q&A after this. Let's do a poll, and then very quick Q&A. I would think less than 5 minutes. I will have to call it then. 92% कोई समझ आया? That's beautiful and very surprising for some reason. तो फिर take a few good assignments guys. मतलब सब समझ आ ही गया तो get a GCP account and do this there. replace nginx with traffic और HA proxy और इसको and भी कर सकते हो आप. क्या थी तीसरी भूल गया मैं. Apache. And what are good other things to add? Try deploying a React app. Should be simple. Get a domain. There is no downside of getting a domain. Spend some 500 rupees. Go to namecheap.com. यहाँ पे सस्ते होते हैं. Before next week, what else? Try ASGs, auto scaling groups in AWS. We'll probably do them next week. Try to do cert management yourself. That's good. I think that's a good set of assignments that you can do after today's class. तो please थोड़ा try, मतलब इतना मुश्किल नहीं होता. DevOps is pretty simple. You don't write a lot of code. You do a bunch of debugging. क्योंकि अगर ये अभी नहीं चलता ना for whatever reason, तो फिर जो मतलब then it's very hard to debug. You have to read through nginx logs and figure out क्या गलती हो गई. If configuration file में you miss something, there is a comma missing or something, you know, you miss a bracket, it's very hard to debug. So debugging gets painful if you miss something obvious. But other than that, DevOps is pretty simple. Oh, one more thing you should do is, which again we'll probably do next week, is create a CI/CD pipeline to auto deploy to your server from GitHub. So these are heavy assignments. If you don't do them, we're going to cover them eventually. Not everything. We will not cover this point, for example. Yeah, everything else we'll cover. But try to do it yourself. Okay? Chalo, I'll open for Q&A and then we'll call it. I have a very small Q&A today because I have to rush. So any questions? वैसे तो 92% समझ आया. I'm assuming no more questions. 5-minute Q&A, then I'll call it. All right. What is the difference between nginx versus container? Very different, bhai. Container is a OS specific concept. Okay, you start a container. Nginx is a process running on your machine. Nginx is forwarding a request somewhere. It's used for networking. Containers are used for starting resources and also, you know, in forward incoming requests, things like these. Very different. When we reach Docker, we'll come there. मतलब apples to oranges का भी मतलब comparison नहीं है ये. Why are IPs private? AWS VM IP is public because AWS has paid the internet organization to get these IPs. They're expensive. They're limited in number, right? So cloud providers have most of these IPs, or you know, big companies have them. Go through the video again for the key pair PEM file. What about Cloudflare? What problem it solves? I'll post an offline video. How to deploy a React frontend on AWS. Beautiful video, and there is a Easter egg in there as well that people told me about. I later realized. Find that Easter egg also, and that will take you through what Cloudflare is, why is it used. How to get application running? Great point. One more thing you should do yourself, and I will also do, is read about Forever or PM2, which is called process management. But someone said a great point. Okay, now if I shut down my laptop, everything is gone, or if galti se it crashes, it's gone forever. So how do you do process management? Read about it. We will also cover it. And you know, but try to do it yourself. थोड़ा कुछ तो करोगे तो बहुत मजा आएगा. Wow, you know, I learned something new myself, and फिर वो खुद ही flywheel start हो जाता है. I've thrown terms at you. Forever and PM2 both are good things to do process management. I also server, when I am making changes and updating the app will be down for a while. Yes, so great point. He said when I update, app will be down for a while. What should I do? One, you don't care. That's a bad approach. Two, you do something called rolling updates. They're very hard to do on a single machine. What you will have to do, this is like one dumb approach I'm showing you, but there are much better ways of doing this. But abhi ke liye, since we don't know Kubernetes, we don't know auto scaling groups, there is no way for us to know if a server is healthy or not. What you can do is, in AWS, there's this concept of load balancers. Create a load balancer, point it to machine number 1, M1. Then when you have to do a deployment, start another machine. This is a very dumb first principles way to do it. There are better ways. We'll get to them when we reach Kubernetes. Start a new machine, deploy a new application here, and then point your load balancer from here to here, and then stop this machine. This is what's called a rolling update. जब वो चल रहा था, मतलब rolling update makes more sense when there are multiple machines. अगर आपके पास 5 मशीनें यहाँ होती with the old code, and then you know you would start the first machine, and then धीरे धीरे you know, firstly load balancer was doing this. Load balancer, balancing load amongst multiple machines. पहले this was happening. when you would have done a rolling update, आप पहले ये करते, now 1/3 of the traffic is going here, then you would have killed the server, then you would have started another machine here, then you would have done another, whatever, rolling update, slowly downsize the old code, upsize the new code. There are things like, if you've heard of blue-green deployments, red-green, blue-green deployments, which are, along very similar lines. And this is done very commonly. You move 10% of the traffic one place. You see, is there an error spike? If there is, you revert. If there's no error spike, then you keep migrating people to the other side. So that's how you do it. In a single server, it will be, yeah, you can do it on a single server, right? तुम ये कर सकते हो कि this is your old process running on port 8080. Start your new process on port 8081. Go to Nginx configuration and just change where it is proxying from 8080 to 8081. Now all your new traffic will start to go here. Then shut down your old process running on 8080. ठीक है, समझ आ गया? Old process was running here. Nginx was pointing here. Start the new process. Change the Nginx configuration to point over here. Then stop the old process. That's how you can mimic a rolling update. But there are better ways to do it. We'll come to them. इतनी मेहनत करने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती basically. If you are ever SSHing into your machine, if you are ever doing an update so manually, you are doing it wrong. You should never SSH into your machine. Even to read logs, you should have some other place. But we'll get to all of this when we get to all of this. ठीक है? चलो, I have to stop the Q&A early. I'm sorry. I'm happy to do another Q&A or whatever. So thank you all for joining. Sorry for a small Q&A today. And I'll see you guys next week, where we'll do. Next week, let's do CI/CD and process management and certificate management. All right, 2 Notion docs I'll open just for culture, and then we'll call it. Oh boy. Do you know JSON RPC? And यहाँ लिखा parity node. Node reaching. Yes, I am sending multiple RPC requests, but I am sending it for a smaller subset of addresses. You are sending it for all addresses, right? That is what I said. Let's look at it again. I do it for interested transactions. You are doing for loop for every transaction in the block. Mine will be much lesser because in a block, my application will probably have 3-4 transactions. So I am running this logic 3-4 times. You are running it for every transaction in the block, which could be 200. That is a problem. You might have to pay for this. Like this is and also as I said, this is not a good approach because then you're heavily relying on one RPC, which if it gets had, you're screwed. So you should be worth this. Do I deserve a bounty on what? What did you do? So what is this? Where is it? I figured out one Alchemy RPC call. Yeah, so this is great. The problem is, as I said, I mean, this is good. If you want a bounty, I'll give you a bounty. But the point is, RPC, when you're doing RPC specific RPC calls, then what happens is, if the RPC gets hacked, you're screwed. Whenever you're writing this code, you basically have 3 RPCs and you have a threshold of 2. अगर दो ने तुम्हें एक चीज़ बता दी, then you say good to go. So yeah, you can probably, I mean, ठीक है, what you can do is do the QN call for quick node, do the Alchemy call for Alchemy, and bonus if you get, it's not very generic, but it might work. So not the worst thing in the world. Doesn't give 100x outcomes. If you have a 10-second block time, doesn't matter if I have to send 5 extra RPC calls, but nonetheless a great find. Cool. Chalo, we'll call it. Sorry, I wasn't sharing my screen. Bye bye guys. It'll be in the recording. Have a good night.